The aim of this miniature was to emulate a typical summer beach road trip atmosphere that most of us or all of us can relate to. We use many visual cues in order to develop the environment, and along with the use of sounds, can create a generally realistic representation of an atmosphere of a road trip.
Through our emulation and inspiration, the miniature allowed us to gaze into creating through the use of old paper, cardboard and paints, attempting to garner inspiration from a collage format, which we looked through in the second week of tutorials. The car was made from a Weet-Bix box, whereas the base was cut from a giant box. It was look back into week 2 of the lectures. A lot of inspiration was taken from Richard Hamilton, who was an artist of the 1950s, who used a lot of magazine cutouts for his artistic work. This project received a lot of inspiration from the movie National Lampoon's Family Vacation. This film, made in the 80s, reflects the nuclear family participating in a road trip context. A lot of the background imaging was taken from this film. Other inspiration we found was the Coca-Cola advertisements, more so through the emotion that they gave out in their advertisements. They try to convey in the ads that make it great for an atmosphere like this if it were to be filmed as an advertisement. We also found that the recent Jeep ads also were a good inspiration. Through image, it was through visual cues that the audience is transported to an environment that they feel familiar with and can relate to in their own experiences. So in our miniature, we aimed at creating a specific environment that through images of summer, beach, roads, families, cars and greenery in order to devise a summer road trip atmosphere. The use of image does not apply to each and every demographic, so we aimed our atmosphere more towards families and even young people who live in Australia because they can understand the conventional visual cues. It would be totally alien if it were to display this to people in North Korea, if I was to give the most extreme example.
So for colour, in an atmospheric setting, colour is very crucial in communicating emotion. In the simplest perspective, the audience receiving positive or negative emotions. Through our atmosphere, we aim to set the scene of happiness, carelessness and freedom. The idea of this road trip is to experience adventure and the excitement of the unknown, because it isn't typically something that people do regularly. The colours we use are all light blues, greens, yellow, that are all stereotypically related to the beach and what most people would think of when they think of a summer day.
Our light would mainly be natural light. The use of natural light, as opposed to making lighting effects, demonstrates the reality and authenticity of the atmosphere. Lighting is very effective in communicating with the audience, and essentially what it is that we want to communicate is this setting is the feeling that this has happened to you, being the audience, and that it is a real possibility.
So the location of this scene is down Great Ocean Road. This is something that is relatable with the road trip atmosphere and one that most people would think of when they think of a summer getaway. When most of us think of a road trip, the first things that come to mind are the ocean, sand, bushes, trees, and nature. We don't usually think of buildings or even other cars around, just the group you're with and a peaceful atmosphere around you. In our location, we included a large car, like this one, that would be packed with all things needed for a holiday, along with a winding road that has no ending, a bright blue sky, a clear blue ocean, and the sand, to really create the feeling of a typical summer road trip.
In terms of space, although we weren't using maps, there is a certain amount of space used in order to establish the setting. Obviously, maps are used to find the area of the place, however, in this atmosphere, we weren't so focused on it.
So for the sounds, when looking at this miniature, we aim for the audience to hear the familiar sounds of a summer beach road trip. The sounds can change depending on the atmosphere inside the car. For example, a family road trip will have different sounds to that of a young group of people. Some common sounds might include talking, aircon blowing, upbeat music, windows down and the sound of the ocean and wind coming through, and even children arguing depending on who's in the car. And that's it.
And that concludes our oral.
We'll just quickly give, that's our car, and the road, and then the background of the beach scene.